Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and today I'm hanging out with Hannah, also known as Schooner or Later, all over the interwebs. I found you on TikTok, where I've been finding a lot of new people because I'm kind of fascinated by the D&D community over there, and excited. Right, I just
Yeah.
love D&D and gaming, and anywhere that I can find that is kind of like new, that's pretty exciting to me. And there's a thriving community over there. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I am also just fascinated with how TikTok has just taken off with the D&D content. I didn't expect it, and about a year ago when I first got the app, I didn't even know that a side of TikTok for D&D existed. So I am very happy to see that there are so many people that just love this game and love memes about this game, stories about this game, tutorials. It's awesome to see.
Yeah, I mean, like the cool thing about D&D over on TikTok is the platform is so much different than anything else that's out there, and it's like whatever you have to say it in like a minute, right?
Yeah.
And then we're also getting like a lot of like fun entertainment stuff as well, where
Mhm.
people are just doing goofy things and silly things, D&D themed, which I'm really enjoying. And then there's other people that are doing tips and advice, so it kind of like runs the gambit, and it's
I
impressive when.
definitely, yeah, sorry. I definitely feel like there's a little something for everyone. If you like the bits that are people dressing up and doing silly things, then there are people that do that. If you like stories about things happening in your campaign, people love that too. If you like just silly memes where you just take TikTok sounds and apply D&D situations to that, people love it. And I just think that that's really cool that there's just such a wide variety of creators that do different things, and yet we all love it. It's awesome.
But so you're not just on TikTok, so you're also streaming campaigns over on Twitch.
Yeah. I stream 3 times a week. On Monday nights, I am in a collaborative Twitch stream called The Paper Dungeon. Another TikToker is with me on that. Her name is Lydia Corin. She's fantastic. And it is a completely homebrewed world. Like, even the Feywild courts are homebrewed. It's amazing. And we have our own overlays, we have our own music. Two of our cast members compose all the music for it. It's amazing. And we are about 10 episodes in, and I am in love with all of the cast members, with all of the characters, and that is every Monday night at twitch.tv/the Paper Dungeon. On Wednesdays, I'm in a campaign called Dungeons and Demigods, which is another homebrew campaign based on the Percy Jackson universe. We are all playing demigods, we all have godparents, and all the classes are homebrewed to kind of fit what godparents we have. I know most about mine just because I've only seen mine, but I am playing a character who is Aphrodite's daughter. So my class is very much like the bard class, a lot of charisma stuff, a lot of spell casting, whereas, sorry, my dog is barking downstairs. I'm sorry if he is loud.
That's okay. I have a dog that also sometimes barks.
Okay. But yeah, so depending on your godparent, the abilities you get are much like a class. Like the Hades kids, they are much like the rogue, stealthy and dark. So that is super cool, and that is with other TikTokers, and we play on my channel at 3:30 PST. And Sunday mornings, I play what used to be Curse of Strahd. It was Curse of Strahd for a long time, and my party loves to play something called Mystery Potion Roulette, where the alchemist in town has a $5 mystery potion bin. We all buy one. If we don't have anything to do, we just all drink one at the same time and see what happens. And one of us got a wish potion, and the wish was for all of the gods to have access to Barovia. And that seemed like such a nice thing to do, like it was for my character because my character was a cleric of the Raven Queen. She couldn't really do divination with her deity, so they were trying to be nice, and it just broke the thing just because of how it was all set up, and we ended up going back in time accidentally, and a character that had died was now alive, but none of us remember except for the character that made the wish. So it's still like the characters, and we still have kind of a similar thing going on, but we're calling it formally known as Curse of Strahd because it is no longer that, and Strahd is no longer even in existence. So that like just happened, but it was Curse of Strahd for a while, and that's 9 a.m. On Sunday mornings PST on my channel as well.
Oh, that's great. So it transported the party back to a time
Yeah.
before Strahd, before Ravenloft.
Before Strahd, before Ravenloft, and so a character in our party that had died at the hands of Strahd no longer did, because the way that the wish worked was Strahd never became a vampire. So we were never in that situation where that character died because of Strahd. It was crazy. It was crazy. We like the witch, because we were all just like having fun, and like my potion made me like turn green, and I just wanted to eat dirt and gained temporary hit points for eating dirt, like I was a plant photosynthesizing.
Yeah.
And so that was just like a meme thing that was happening. Like my friend's character turned from a man to a woman for a couple hours. Like we were all like, oh, this is so fun. And then my other character got a wish spell in the potion, and then we were like, oh, that is much more groundbreaking than turning into a plant.
Yeah, wish spells and effects will do strange things to your game. That is for sure. That and the deck of many things.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that is on Sunday mornings, and every couple months I will meet with and record for a Twitch channel called The Proficiency Bonus. I'm in a couple campaigns on there. I'm in a campaign called Kids on Brooms. It's the Harry Potter TTRPG little thing. So we meet every now and then for that. And also, oh my goodness, it's called After. I actually am unsure if this is homebrewed or not, but basically every couple months we'll meet, and our characters have already died. And so we are meeting in like Shadowfell, where the Raven Queen hails, and where the Raven Queen kind of judges you and tells you where you go. But we're like flagged for having unfinished business left in the mortal plane. So we have to wear like husks, is what they're called, where we like borrow recently deceased bodies. It's crazy. It's really cool. So like what we appear in real life, we basically have to create 2 character appearances to where this is how we appear like when we were living, and this is what we look like now because we are wearing a husk. It's really cool. And so I do that every couple months too. So, and if time permits, then I will write and dungeon master a one-shot for my followers on TikTok. I have a little questionnaire in my link tree where my followers can go in and fill out their information and availability if they want to participate in a one-shot, and then when time permits, I'll randomly select from there.
Sounds like you're very busy.
Yes. Yes, I am.
So how did all of this start?
Really, it all started with trying to entertain myself in quarantine in March. I was getting my musical theater degree. I still am. It's just virtual now, but I was in New York with all of my friends. We were going to class. Everything seemed fine. I got out of ballet. I got a call from my school that said I had until the end of the night to get out of the dorms.
Oh,
It was very stressful. It happened very quickly. A lot of other schools had already sent people home, but my school was trying to hang on as long as possible, so we had less time. And so I went from, being in New York and having stuff to do every day to being at home and having virtual classes and trying to find ways to entertain myself when I couldn't see any of my friends. So I found the TikTok app, and then my friend started sending me D&D TikToks. And I was like, what? They make those? I was like, this is hilarious. And there was one day where I had an idea for one. And I was like, I don't know if this is funny, but I'm going to make it anyway. And I did. And then it got like a lot of views. And I was like, what is happening? And then I just kept making them for fun for myself. And people started really liking them. And so I started telling stories about the campaign I was in with my college friends. and how, I'm a dungeon master and how I really love that, but being a player can be so much fun too. And then people were asking me, would you ever dungeon master for your followers? And I was like, that's a really interesting idea. I never thought of that. And so I learned what Twitch was. I had no idea what it was before. I learned what Twitch was, how does it work, and I made a video and said, I want a dungeon master for you guys. Comment if you're interested. And then I got like 500 comments, and I was like, oh, okay. And I picked 6 random people, and we played, and I just kept doing that, and people seemed to like the idea of like inclusivity, where I was pushing for everyone can play. I don't care how experienced you are, everyone can learn to play this game and love it all at the same time. It doesn't have to be a stressful experience. So I would do Discord calls, and I would help people build their characters, and I would teach the general basis of the rules and everything that I think you need to know before you start. But really, just learning as you play can be super rewarding as well. But some of the lingo is really like daunting. So I would be like, this is GP is gold pieces. Once you
Yeah.
know that, it becomes way less daunting. Like, what is AC, armor class? Hit points is usually much easier to grasp if you've played other video games. Like, it's usually across the board, like HP is your health. But yeah, so I would do Discord calls where I would walk people through the building of a character, what everything means, break down what different classes are, like what different spells are, and then we would play a one shot. And then from there, I just started making videos every day with like memes or like, again, stories from my campaigns. And then people started reaching out to me wanting to play D&D with me. And so I went on a couple channels, and now I am in about 6 ongoing campaigns, 3 weekly, and then 3 every couple months.
That's great. Congratulations on your success. I mean,
Thank you.
basically 50,000 followers in 6 months is pretty impressive.
It's crazy. I never expected it, but I guess that's what makes it so fun.
You're D&D famous now.
I guess so.
Well, it's funny too, because like you mentioned, helping others with the lingo and video games. I never really thought about it because like when we started, there was no point of reference. Like you could
Right.
like video games was barely a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And not to the point where we'd be able to point to that and be like, oh, it's like this.
Right.
And what we would do oftentimes is we get a new player. There was no internet. There was no like researching. You would get a new player and be like, here, sit next to, Bob. They've been playing a long time, and they'll help you if you need help with something. But now, like, the barrier to entry is so low and so much easier than it's ever been. I mean, you can even get a lot of the stuff for free, depending on what you're playing. And like you can't go to any platform now without finding content on gaming. So
It's true. And I definitely do think I've played a couple editions, but I think 5th edition is the easiest to learn, in my opinion. Some people that have played other editions may have their quibbles with it, but I think as far as simplicity and like being able to pick it up quickly, I think 5th edition is nice for that.
yeah, it's got a really good mix. I mean, I won't say I played every edition, but I've played since first and or the tail end of first, and it's got like a good mix of all the editions in there. We constantly say like they somehow managed to grab like the good stuff from each of the editions pretty much.
I definitely would agree with that. I have played I played like a one shot for 2nd edition, and I played with my family when I was little with 3.5. So I really knew 3.5, and then I went to college and I met other people that only knew 5th edition. So I was like, okay, I'll learn a new edition. Like, that's fine. Yeah. We don't want it to be complicated. And then I was like, oh, this is like a lot easier to understand. I was also older though, like maybe trying to grasp things when you're like 12 is a little harder than when you're 18. But I definitely think that right now, the ability to join this game has become so easy, and I love that. I love that it has become way more accessible and available, and the majority of the D&D community on TikTok is so accepting, and so like anyone can play and you can literally be whatever you want. It's such a great message because so many things for so long have been kind of, even if not explicitly, but kind of gatekept a little bit about who can participate and who can play, or just what it appeared like who could play. Like D&D for a while was notably a guy thing. But I have seen so many women and so many just young girls learning to play and loving it. The way that I got my roommate to play in college, because she was kind of, I don't know, like, am I gonna like this? Like, this is kind of like a guy thing. And I was like, what if I
Yeah.
told you you could be an elven princess? And she was like, when do we start? So
Yeah.
it's like there's a little bit of something for everybody, and I just really love that. And I love how on TikTok especially there's so much warmth and acceptance, especially on my channel. I would say I'm very thankful to not have received hate messages. A lot of creators kind of experience that, and I would say across the board, the only, if you can even call them negative, messages I have received have just been people wanting to kind of dispute whether a game mechanic I talked about is really how that mechanic works, or wanting to talk about whether you should play like rules as is or let your dungeon master kind of play around with what rules work for them. It's all been kind of debate stuff and not necessarily like hate messages, which a lot of creators unfortunately, with my experience in the community, it's super all, and we all want to help you learn to play the game, which I just love so much.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I've done these with women that are closer to my own age, I'm always kind of like, well, how did you get into the hobby? Because
Yeah,
it
yeah.
it was hard for anyone to get into the hobby, back then, but it was less inviting for women to get into it for sure, and much more
Mm-hmm.
intimidating. It's not nearly as welcoming, and it was not nearly as welcoming and open as it was that. And also, I mean, this is only my point of view.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't seem like many women were interested as well.
Yeah, I mean, with that, like looking back on earlier editions, however, I don't really blame them just because a lot of the mechanics, I believe it was second edition where there was like a stat cap for female characters.
There was
And like,
this for strength.
yeah, and like the game where you're supposed to be able to do and be whatever you want, and then like hearing that you wouldn't be able to necessarily do whatever you want, I don't really blame them for not being interested in that.
Yeah, so like my experience was whenever we had a lady at the table, it was usually someone's spouse. It
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be until much later that our group would get more diverse. And I mean, it wasn't something we set out for. It was just like these were the people that
Absolutely, yeah.
we played
I
with.
also feel like the stigma around D&D has completely changed, however, as well. Because there was that I mean, it still exists, don't get me wrong. I just feel like it's getting more debunked now that the internet is a thing, but about like D&D being satanic and everything, and like the image of guys in their basement playing was probably just a little scary maybe to a lot
Yeah,
of women too. But now that we have the internet and we have so much access to content of people playing the game, people are like, that is not what it is at all.
we play other
And
places too, not just the
yeah,
basement.
yeah, we could play at the dining room table if we want. It doesn't have to be the basement. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just feel like right now D&D has become such a like normal thing. And I have people ever since I started growing a platform that have known me for a long time that didn't even know that I played D&D that have reached out to ask me to teach them to play because it seems so interesting. And a lot of musical theater students that I know that like didn't even know about it when they hear that it's basically just an improv movie, like if you
Yeah.
want to think about it like that, where you get to make your character's backstory and motivation, whatever you want it to be, that is such a draw for people that didn't really know what the game was about. So yeah, I definitely feel like it has become way easier to figure out what D&D actually is, because propaganda can be, propaganda will exist, but now you have like evidence like in front of you of like recordings of people playing the game and people talking about the game, to where it's much easier to realize that it isn't that.
Well, also too, it's showing up in more and more media. In the books that we
Mhm.
read, the movies we watch, the TV
Absolutely.
shows we watch, so people get to kind of see it in action.
Mhm.
And when it's represented well, they see people just having fun, right? And that's like
Yeah.
the key. I would a lot of times I just describe it as we just play make believe as adults and roll funny
It's
shaped
basically
dice.
that. The imagination game for adults, and there's dice. That is the perfect way. That is how I describe it to people when people are like, "Oh, you play D&D?" Like what's that? Like I don't really know what it is. I just know from Stranger Things. And then if they tell me they know from Stranger Things, then I'll say, "Okay, well, if you know from Stranger Things, then this is how like I play and this is how they play. I do things a little different," or like whatever. But it's so funny how many people just want to instantly right out the gate fight a Demogorgon, and then
Yeah.
I have to tell them how high the challenge rating is and how I don't know if you want that to be your first monster fight. Like there's a reason why like it is so big and scary in the show. Like it's big and scary in the
Yeah.
game too.
Although they do have the show Demogorgon in the box set, which is a little bit different.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
The,
Um
I actually really enjoyed the Stranger Things box set.
I actually have not been able to get my hands on it, so I don't know much about it.
So okay, so I liked it because I felt like it was kind of set up a little bit more like earlier edition
Mhm.
box sets, and also like I looked at it purely from I've never played D&D before, but I'm going to open up this box and play with my friends and run a game,
Sure,
and it
sure.
and it just seemed so much more inviting and easy to run and play in than like Minds of Fendelver. Like
Yeah.
that's a better buy for your money, but I feel like it's not really meant for somebody who's never played the game before to be like, here,
Right.
I'm just gonna run this for my friends. It's a lot more
Sure.
to it, and it's a lot more involved. It's longer. So I actually really enjoyed that starter set more so from the perspective of like, here's a new player, they're gonna get into the hobby for the first time.
Like beginner friendly, so to speak.
Yeah,
Cool. I didn't know about that. I'll have to tell my Discord server. But yeah, speaking of being just beginner friendly and speaking of accessibility, um there are so many just regular stores that now have D&D items. Such as I saw a video on TikTok the other day where the Dollar Tree is selling dollar dice sets right now.
oh
That
wow,
was amazing to me.
yeah.
And at Target, although it has been very hard for me to find them again. A couple months ago, I was getting groceries for my mom, and I went to the game section because I like to go to the game section, and there were dice sets for like $6. And sure, they were like one color, but like for someone who is just starting to play the game that maybe doesn't have the like maybe isn't sure how much they like the game. Like, do I like the game enough to spend $20 on a dice set? I don't know yet. Like, that is an amazing like option for them to be able to spend like $6 and get a dice set, and that's all you need. And the starter set and the essentials kit that Target now sells is just so like it has made it so easy for my boyfriend's family, for example, to kind of learn to play the game because it gives you character sheets, dice, like adventures you could choose from. So the accessibility and the beginner friendliness across the board is just amazing. And I feel like we kind of talked about with the pandemic and with spirits being kind of low for a long time, this kind of escapism is really appealing.
Yeah, there's definitely people that are playing a lot more than they have in the past, as well as people that are coming online to play that wouldn't have done that previously, which
Right.
is going to opens up so many more options now, for people. Maybe they normally had weird schedules, and now, you can pop online and you've got so many different time zones, so you can find games that
Definitely.
other people, maybe your weird schedule is their normal schedule, so
Yeah, and
you
like
can
you don't have to
connect.
worry about travel time or anything like that. Like you can just pop on Zoom or pop on Discord for a couple hours. It's I don't want to say that I like it better than in person because obviously there's something about like being surrounded by music and food and your friends like being at the table, but online D&D, especially with like tabletop simulator and roll 20 and everything like that, has become much more real and much more immersive. And also being able to just like right after class you could just get on Zoom and you don't have to worry about, well, it takes me 20 minutes to get here, and then if there's traffic then it takes an hour, and then it'll take me an hour to get home, but I have something at this time. Like travel time is taken completely out of it, and it makes it so much easier to be able to play.
Yeah, it eliminates some of the side chatter that happens at the table, and it just
Hmm.
kind of like focuses more in on the game.
Yeah.
So, so I feel like you get more gaming in less time, and you don't have those other things like you said, travel time and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I mean, generally, we might take an hour before and after the game to
To
just
just
like hang
talk
out.
and like
Yeah.
mess around. I definitely agree, and that's why for my Monday night paper dungeon campaign, we usually get on Zoom an hour before we start just to get
Yeah.
out all of our like wiggles and all of our I missed you so much, like so that by the time um like 5 o'clock for me rolls around and we're ready to stream for people, we've kind of like got our wiggles out and are able to like focus on the game.
That's I think that's really important. I mean, a lot of the questions we end up fielding from people when they have problems in their games, I'm often like, "Who are you playing this game with? Like, why aren't you
Yeah.
playing it with people that you consider your friends?" I,
Yeah.
and I think 9 out of 10 times they're like all online games with people that really don't interact with each other other than to play the game.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Another thing before I really took off, like as a creator, as far as followers and exposure and everything, I had made a Facebook group to try to help people find D&D groups online because I got a lot of questions once I started doing one shots for my followers and talking about my campaigns. They were like, "How do you find a D&D group? None of my friends want to play." And so I made this Facebook group where you go and you kind of post like, this is my availability. I'm this kind of person. Like whether you have a preference, whether you're a complete beginner and you don't even know how to play, or you're a dungeon master looking for like experience in storytelling and everything. And I have heard some very great reviews because a lot of the questions that people will ask each other before they play is they'll fill out the RPG consent checklist of like, what are you okay with? Because when you're playing with people that aren't your friends, you don't know what the people around the table have been through and what could be not fun for them. So it's this wonderful sheet. I don't know if you've seen it, where it's like there are things listed and you can put red, green, or yellow. Red being, please don't mention this, it's very upsetting to think about because of a past experience or something. Yellow being, you could mention it, but maybe don't be so explicit. And green being, that doesn't bother me. And I think that really pushing to have that sheet when you're first joining a group is so important to just get rid of any kind of problems at the table that could have been easily avoided, such as, you know, character romance. Some people are super okay with that, and some people are super uncomfortable. And knowing that before you're in a situation to have character romance is really important, I feel. And so, but I have heard a lot of great things about people finding groups here and finding like minded people like them, and now they're probably going to be lifelong friends. The groups that I've played that I have DM'd one shots for really liked each other and they still play D&D together and they just found another dungeon master. And so playing with your friends is there's nothing like playing with your friends. Like it's amazing. But if you don't have friends that are interested in the game, you can make friends through the game, I feel.
No, that's absolutely correct, and that's the approach they should be taking. I think, like I said, I think when people have problems is when they start trying to divorce the relationships from the game,
Mm-hmm.
and that, it's just the game. You need that other component as well.
And
Uh,
you need trust, I feel like trust the people around you so that you can be yourself and you can role play how you want to role play, and like don't worry about like I mean, you shy people are still going to be shy, but I mean
mhm.
like feeling safe to get really into the game, because if you're playing with people that you don't really know and like you're not sure how they feel about certain things, you may like be afraid to speak, and like that's never fun.
It can definitely be awkward with people that you're not used to being around. Like, I remember when my youngest brother was still in college, and he threw together a game, and we would play at his place. And he had several roommates, and then like we were playing, and then a like impromptu party kind of like popped up around our game, which was like
Hmm.
totally weird and kind of like shut
Oh
everybody
no.
down. Because it is kind of weird to like to RP and get into character and do all this, make funny voices and do this weird stuff
Yeah,
around a
yeah.
bunch of strangers.
Definitely. That does not sound very fun. That's
Not
another
at
thing
all.
probably about online that I would like, because when we were at school in the dorms, there weren't many places to play. We had a party of 8 people. It was a big party, and so our dorm rooms wouldn't really suffice for how many people were in the party, and so we had to try to commandeer study rooms, sometimes classrooms, and there were always people that would walk in and see me wearing a wizard hat and a bunch of people with like dice and be like, what is happening? I remember one time, oh my god, I will never forget this. We were our teacher, we found a teacher that like played the game, that was like, if you ever need to use my classroom like after hours, like that's totally fine, just let me know, and like I'll make sure that it's available to you. And we were like, that is so nice, thank you. And so we were like I as the DM got to have like the teacher desk that was bigger, and my friend knew how to work the projector, so I would project the map so everyone could see it. It was super cool. But there was one time that we were playing and I was wearing a wizard hat, and one of the public safety, like it's our campus security people, walked by and was like, what is this, some kind of workshop? Because we all had our computers, because we used D&D Beyond for character sheets, and we were like, uh-huh.
Yeah, that's it.
We were like, yeah,
Exactly that.
we were like, this is a workshop. And he was like looking at like the map and the dice and stuff, and he was like, okay, uh have fun. And it was so awkward because like just the wizard hat and the dice and me in the middle of like speaking as a goblin, it was just
Yeah.
so funny. It was so funny, and I will never forget that. But so we started calling it our workshop from now on. When talking around people that like didn't play the game, we would be
Yeah.
like, oh, don't forget that we have the workshop at 8. They'd be like, ah, yes, the workshop, I will make sure to do my work before. We'd be like, yes, good. Like, oh god, it was so funny. But playing in a classroom was really fun. There was so much more space, and the projector and being able to like project it and write on top of it with like the whiteboard marker was
Yeah.
really cool.
That is cool. That's funny because so when we were in high school and we would play, it was definitely not the cool thing to do. Um, and several of my friends were all musicians, so like they just started calling it rocking out. We were just like, "You gonna rock out this weekend?" Yeah.
Yeah.
So we spoke in code, but I thought we'd gotten past that. Because I've heard people tell me stories of like kids where they're like, "Oh, I don't want to play this game, but I don't think I'm cool enough."
Aw.
Which is weird. It was like it's so weird for me because that's like the polar opposite of.
See, I feel like now, if we were back at school, we wouldn't have to speak in code. But at
Yeah.
that time, it wasn't a big thing. And also, we had trouble because, like, just saying D&D before that is why we had an 8-person party with one dungeon master. because we started with 4, and then people started finding out D&D.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want in. And I was like, please come. And then it got to the point where I was like, combat with 8 people and monsters. Good. And we played for like 12 hours. Honestly, we would take breaks for food, and that was it.
Yeah.
So
That sounds about right. And then you're at the right age for that. I mean,
yeah.
so I owned a house in my early 20s. So, and then Ted was still in college. He's a couple years younger than me, and then he had friends that were a couple years younger than him. And my youngest brother is 8 years younger than me.
Oh,
so,
wow, yeah.
You know, so generally, like, I would be the oldest and maybe 1 or 2 of my friends. And actually, we never made it out of the basement. I did have a dining room, but my wife banished us to the basement. But you know, we like built this, like, you know, a table out of plywood essentially that everyone would like draw on and stuff. But that's
so cool.
We would get together like 3 to 4 in the afternoon, and like many times we'd be leaving, and you know the sun would be coming up. So
yeah. Like for us, if it was a study room, before we got permission from that teacher to use their classroom, we had in my dorm on the bottom floor was study rooms, and I lived on the first floor. So like the deal was, I would wake up early as the dungeon master. It would be my job to get the room. And so I would wake up early, I would run downstairs, and I would try to get the room. And if I didn't get the room, then I would text the group chat, and we would figure out, I need to sneeze. No, I don't. We would figure out what the alternative is. So, I would literally grab like all of my books, and I would go down and I would spread them out along the table to make it look like there were like people there that maybe just like went to the vending machine or something. And so I would get the room at like 8:30, and then we would play at like, people would say, all right, I'm on breakfast duty. What do you guys want? And we'd be like, I want this, I want this, I want that. And so they would come back hands full of like the pancakes or the waffles or something. We'd eat, and then we'd start. And then at lunch, DM would stay, or someone would stay while everyone else went to get food. And whoever went was like, hey, what do you want? And so you'd tell them. We would eat lunch, and then we would play. And then when it got to dinner time, we would like decide, all right, do we want to keep going, or do we want to like have dinner together and that's that? And usually they were like, keep going, I don't want to stop. So we were like, all right. So we would either order food, or we would again have someone stay, and like they would go get the dinner, and then we would play until we literally like were too tired to function.
That is the problem with D&D. Like once you get into the deep end, like there's nothing else in life.
especially when exciting things happen, and I'm maybe like, okay, we could end it now, and then you could enter the creepy dungeon next week. And they'd be like, I'm not waiting. Yeah. I was like, okay. It was a lot of DM prep on my part just because of how long we would play, but also I was trying to encourage role playing. It was a first time. Like, it was my first long campaign as a dungeon master, and it was a lot of their first times just playing in general. Like, they, like, had an idea about the game, they had an idea about the rules and everything, but it was their first time actually, like, applying it to the game, so it was a first for all of us, and we were, like, learning how to role play and everything, and getting comfortable with that. So, once we kind of got the hang of it, this was, like, the highlight of the week, and we did not want to stop playing.
Well, it sounds like you're doing an awesome job, because your players were literally holding you hostage and wouldn't let you leave. I will say, though, if any of your players from college happen to see this, or if you want to pass it along, I think it's a little BS that you have to DM and find the room.
Well, it also was fair that I was the closest. Yeah. Sometimes my roommate would find the room and I would make the coffee. Sometimes we would switch off, but it was the smallest trek for me to get the room. So, I mean, yeah, I would also be like, usually we made like monster cards where like I made like cards, and I would like put it on my dungeon master screen to like what they were fighting so they could shake in fear. But it sometimes took a little bit of time to make those, so sometimes I would get up even earlier so that I could be in the room like cutting out the cards quickly so that like they were ready. But I had like this huge Ziploc bag of just a ton of cards one time, and like I just had the bag on the desk, and like they knew what the bag meant. And seeing that many cards
Uh-huh.
made them like, "What you got there?" And I was like, "Nothing. We'll see." And just having the bag of cards was enough to scare them. It was fantastic. The power that I
Nice.
held was everything. Also, it was funny because my roommate was on the opposite side of me, and I would prep for the next session in front of her, but like secretly to myself. But sometimes when I'm prepping, I'll like roll a dice to be like, do I really want to be that mean? Let's roll it. Yeah, I guess I do. And so like I would roll dice and kind of like chuckle to myself, and she would be like,
What's going
like,
on
what
over
is
there?
going on over there? And she would sometimes just record me, and like I had headphones on once, and I was like rolling for how many of what kind of monster they were going to experience. And so I rolled, and I was like, oh, and I just kept rolling, and she recorded me, and I'm like laughing evilly in between rolls, and she's like, guys, I'm really scared. I don't know what we're gonna face tomorrow. It was so fun.
Or
to, like,
Hannah might be possessed. We're not entirely sure.
That too. Or both.
Yeah.
But it was just so funny because just like the act of rolling dice or just having the bag of monster cards was enough to instill fear into them without even starting the session. It was so fun.
So are you generally a heavy prep DM?
I would say I am, but I do think that is mostly because I have anxiety. So, like, feeling like I am very prepared kind of makes my anxiety, like, go away so I can focus on what I actually prepared. But I don't mind if we, like, I don't want to be, like, a railroader where, like, we have to do what I prepared. But having, like, an idea of, okay, and if they want to do this, I'm thinking maybe like this could be cool, and I'll just like make a note of like if they end up going down path A, maybe we'll like have this. Just like having a general idea just makes me feel like secure in like my ideas, so that if we get there, I'm not like, can we take a 20-minute break? I don't know what's happening, so that I could be like, ah yes, I planned for this. Like I would say I'm a heavy prep DM, but not to the point where if we don't do what I prepped, I'm like upset. You know what I mean?
So Joe has got a couple questions. He's got a
Okay.
standard question that he always asks, which is, what's your favorite dragon?
What's my favorite dragon? Okay, this is hard because in my campaign that I DM'd, one of my players managed to find a bronze pseudo dragon, and I said its name was Bims, and it was really cute, and I had to like roleplay as the dragon, and it was adorable. However, okay, my favorite dragon to roleplay as a dungeon master is a red dragon because they are so sinister and they're so charismatic and manipulative that like you can like act like you're being like a gentleman and like super kind, and you're just like, I just appreciate the fine things, when really they are walking into a complete trap, and any promise that you make most likely will not come to pass. That is a super fun kind of character to play. And the color red is just so powerful. So when I'm the DM, I'm like, yes. But to experience, I really like green dragons because they are amphibious. They can hide in the water or on land, and they can exist very easily on both of those. And fire is terrible. Like, it is still hurt, but if it doesn't hit you, you'll just get hot. It's not really like, if you make a successful deck save, it won't really affect you. Poison gas, however, is a lot harder to evade. So I guess that is still me being a dungeon master being like, that's really cool. I don't think as a player I would want to experience any of that. But
Yeah.
thinking about an amphibious dragon where you don't see anything in the sky, so you think you're safe, but really they've been in the lake in front of you the whole time and you just have no idea, is really cool.
That is cool. Black dragons are similar as well in that regard. I don't know if whites breathe underwater. Although with dragons though, like they're kind of so high, they can hold their breath for so long. But hear me out. Red dragon submerged in lava
I know. And that's cool too, because
It's
you're
like
like in the
water, but
volcano
it
and you're
burns.
like, yeah, you're like, yeah, no, that is really cool. It's just dragons are just so cool in general, and role playing as them is super fun.
So Joe also wants to know how you focus your anxiety. Now, at this point, I've done so many of these and I've talked to so many different people. I feel like
Uh-huh.
we I feel like just like everybody has anxiety. Not to belittle yours or anyone else's.
No, no, don't worry about that. It is so this is what I usually like to do. I do a breathing exercise before we start because my anxiety might manifest in shortness of breath. So I don't want to be role playing the like evil queen and not be able to breathe. like I don't want to be doing that. So I'll like do like kind of like a centering like breathing exercise before the players arrive, or if we're playing online before I start the Zoom call, just to like center and ground myself. Like, what does the chair feel like? If I sorry, my cat stretched. If I like if I'm breathing deeply, a lot of the time my mind can focus on other things like what did I prepare? What exactly did I want them, like what information is this NPC supposed to give them? Everything else that happens is in the player's hands, but what is the point of this NPC? And so I will like go over that in my head and I'll be like, yes, okay. They just need to figure out the location. That's all they need. Everything else is just extra little flavor. And so I have like a cheat sheet with I also have a list of random names that I really like in case they're in a town and they're like, "Can we see the doctor?" And I'm like, "Yes, this fantasy town certainly has a doctor. Archibald Crane." Like, and I'll
Right.
like look at my random list of names and be like, "Oh yes, the doctor. He lives up the street." Like, I try to have a list of names readily available so they don't have to be like Mr. Smith or something in my brain when I have it up in the moment. So I try to have not. And the NPCs that I've planned for, I have one sentence that kind of captures their essence and what they need to tell the players. So if it's just like a barmaid, then I'll say she's sassy or she's really shy. Or like something to just like be a guide so that I can just look at it really quick and be like, okay, I got that. And it just my planning will be so that my future self who is dungeon mastering doesn't get overwhelmed. So I can look at it and be like, look at all of this stuff that I did. I'm good. I don't have to worry. And but breathing is very important because if you don't have the breathing down, then you can be, like I said, having trouble breathing while you're trying to be an evil queen, and then and then you just don't. It doesn't work.
It's far less scary. I feel like that, getting the breathing down just applies to life in general.
Oh yeah,
For
definitely.
sure. Uh, Kyoto wants to know if you'd let a player play a flunf.
Play a flump. Honestly, depending on the situation, of course, I love flumps, so I would not mind this at all. We would just have to figure out the mechanic of only communicating telepathically and only understanding Undercommon. That could be pretty hard if you're being a party member, but if one of the other party members like knew Undercommon and could like translate for you, that could be a fun mechanic where you're like friends with that player because like the party will be talking and he'll be like, "We're gonna go to the dungeon. There's 5 guards." Like, that could be fun. But also, I would just be afraid that you could give yourself away because of your glowing tentacles. Because when you're afraid, you're gonna flash yellow, and when you're
Yeah.
angry, you're gonna flash red. And although flumps have the ability to camouflage as mushrooms, um, I know that it's canon that young flumps or sort of inexperienced flumps being in a certain area often give themselves away because they may be trying to be green as a mushroom, but they'll flash yellow because they're afraid. So we'd need to work out the mechanics of how to juggle all of that, I would say. But absolutely, I love Flumps. A Flumph wizard, I saw art for that one time. Adorable. Excuse me? So yes.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's something that could work. I'm pretty open to players playing something. And also, as far as choices go, especially if they, you make them start as just the out of the monster manual Flumph and build from there, pretty weak. So
yeah, not very strong. So we'd have to also figure out like the trajectory of leveling up and everything.
Yeah.
But having like a spray for when you're scared so your party can escape. I mean, the party probably wouldn't want to be near you for a couple hours, but it could be an effective means of escape.
Yeah. I could just imagine the immature roleplay at the table.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe the Flumph Party.
That'd be fun.
That's what you have to do. If a player wants to play a Flumph in your game, you have to convince them.
We're all being Flumps.
The rest of the party to be Flumps.
That would be so fun.
Who's going to be the Flumph barbarian?
I actually have I painted Flumph minis. I got sent Flumph minis to my P.O. box, which was super sweet, and I painted them all, and I actually avoided painting red and blue tentacles because thinking of Flumps being angry or sad made me really sad, and I didn't want to paint that.
Oh no.
So I painted pink tentacles for like being amused, and green for curious, and yellow for afraid in case I ever like use them. But yeah, I don't know if you know this about me, Dave, but I am obsessed with Flumps. They're my favorite, and that's probably why I know Kyoto. He's in my Discord channel, so he probably like knows that and was asking about it. But I actually just like came out with some merch for that, and I drew a Flumph, and then my friend, who's like a design artist, because I am not an artist, so I like drew like what I like wanted to look like, and she like made it better and look nicer. And so it's like a little, can you see it? Let me turn my light down. It's a little Jedi Flumph.
Oh, yeah.
And it says, "May the Flumph be with you." And I did a ton of research on copyright to see if this would even be allowed. And it is, which is super fun. But yeah, so, and I'm probably going to come out with more Flumph stuff, because I drew a Flumph for every emotion that my friend is slowly just making look actually like a Flumph. So that's nice. But yeah, Flumps are my favorite. I think they're adorable. They're basically walking mood necklaces. Floating mood necklaces, and it's really cute.
So Ted did a craft exchange with Goblin Katie from Twitter, and he was like thinking like craft D&D thing, right? And like so he like kept bashed some minis or something, but she sent him a Flumph that she like made and sewn, like almost like stuffed animal. Yeah, basically.
Oh my god! After this, can you send me her information? Because I may get one if she's selling them.
Yeah, I don't think she's selling them, but you can probably start her. I think she's on D4. Yeah, she's on D4 channel, and then but it's Goblin Katie on Twitter.
Okay. I think that it's so sad that there's just not so much like merch about Flumphs. Like, I mean, the figures of adorable power they do have a Flumph, which I'm very happy about. But like, if you're just looking up like D&D stuff or D&D stuffed animals, they almost never have Flumphs, and I think that should change. Flumphs are adorable. So,
Gamehole Con does a plush every year. And let's see. So behind me is the Adiug and the Mimic, and I think we have a Bulle somewheres, and we had a Displacer Beast, but Ted's daughter absconded with it and has not yet resurfaced. Just displaced. The Displacer Beast is displaced.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So there is that. Yeah, unfortunately, I got to get Ted to take a picture of it so we can put it up on social media of the Flumph. Ted is kind of terrible when it comes to social media.
That's
Uh,
fair.
so he's our social media vacuum.
Hmm.
But in all fairness, social media can be fun and also not so fun. So he's probably
Hmm.
better off. So what's next?
Well, I am hoping to continue like making some merch and stuff, and when I get the time, I'm going to be making dice. I have the materials and everything, but a couple months ago I was making dice and I got elbow tendonitis, so I needed to take a couple months off from like sanding so much.
Uh-huh.
So just like working around like getting a pottery wheel and everything, I'm going to be making dice, and I am probably going to start selling embroidery patches too. And I'm hoping to have more time for one shots and continue doing that, and potentially start like lifting up people that want to start becoming creators and kind of like being like, well, this is what I did, or this is what I would recommend, or something like that, and continuing to teach and continuing to bring D&D to more people across the board. I think that I'm basically gonna keep doing what I'm doing, but start doing more like active teaching and active bringing the game to more people, I think.
Very, very, very cool. And like I said, it's pretty awesome that you're able to grow so fast, and and you'll probably just continue to grow, especially as it gets more popular.
Mm-hmm.
And it does seem like TikTok is a much better platform for younger creators, and even we had a couple on from Collective Arcana, and Sarah was saying like I was doing things on Twitter, and Twitter seems mean, and there wasn't much interaction going on, and I went to
Mm-hmm.
TikTok and did one video, and people really liked it and responded, and which is good. Like that helps so much because the encouragement to keep going, because this stuff is hard. Like I know, like we
Yeah.
did Nerdarchy for the first 6 months, and it was like crickets, right?
Mm-hmm.
so, to get traction sometimes it's a little difficult. So it's awesome that we're getting more voices
Yeah.
and people out there talking about the game. And but I want to ask, do you play other games other than D&D?
So I am playing, like I said, the Harry Potter TTRPG. My friend is looking to try Pathfinder. I've never played it, but I am very interested in it, and I hear that it just kind of I hear from people that have played it before that some of the things that I add as a DM are already a thing in Pathfinder, like just a little more for like more checks and more kind of trying to
Nuance.
be, yeah, nuances, exactly. So I've been told that I would really enjoy Pathfinder. I have played the Retroverse. I don't know if you have ever heard of that. It's super fun. It's called
Yeah.
Lasers and Liches, and it has a whole different kind of thing. That was super fun, playing a restless skeleton with like jewels all over me. That was really cool. But the Kids on Brooms kind of takes out the use of like the D20 the whole time, and different checks require different dice. So depending on like your class, whereas I am the loyal best friend, that's like the character that I picked. That's like
Yeah.
my class, and it comes with certain things. For charisma, because that's my highest stat, I use a d20. And for strength, which would be like, or I think it's called bravery in this, for my lowest stat, I would use a d4, and it would have a different scale where, like, basically your stats are like ranked and you use different dice for those checks because you're not as good at them. It's kind of interesting. I really like it. It's much more simple and not so many checks, and the checks are with different dice.
Yeah, I really enjoy rules light systems that are kind of easy to jump into and start
Mm-hmm.
playing. I mean, even though 5e is kind of like in some ways the simplest and most streamlined version of D&D,
It's
it's still D&D,
still.
so it's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily rules light. Yeah, it's just
Absolutely.
the
I would
rules
agree.
lightest version of D&D.
Yes.
So yeah, yeah, I'm actually playing in a Pathfinder game tonight for the first session. We did our session 0 a couple weeks ago, and I've kind of looked at it, but I've kind of like haven't really messed with Pathfinder because I'm like, well, if I'm going to play a D&D game, I'm just going to play D&D.
Right.
I tend to move to other systems when I'm jumping to other genres.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but so far I like it. It seems fun, and I definitely like it a lot better than I like 1E Pathfinder.
Mm-hmm.
Like, both games have like a lot of choices to them, but it seems like so far with the second edition, those choices are a lot more substantial and meaningful. Where in Pathfinder 1E was basically 3.5 D&D,
Right.
and
Right.
so like yeah, there was lots of choices, but they were like they simply just break down the plus ones and plus twos, which to me is kind of arbitrary and not
Yeah.
particularly interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't know. It's, and also as always for me, it's like who's playing. Like that's the biggest draw to any system. Like I'll play systems I don't really care for if I like the players that are playing because we'll have fun anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we're at the hour mark. I want to thank you for coming on. Final thoughts before we head out.
Thank you so much for having me, and I want to stress that you can be whatever you want in this game. Like, you could be a gnome barbarian if you want to. That option is available to you. Don't be afraid to think outside of the box with your characters. You can be whatever you want to be.
Awesome. You've been an absolute delight to chat with, and until next time, stay nerdy.
Thank you.